Our guest today is Imam Abdul-Latif, and this is Perspectives with Asima Silva. And it comes to you, of course, from the studios on Main Street of WCCA TV. Thank you for being with us today. Let me not only send it over to our host, and of course we are all socially distanced here. You notice a little bit of a different look. And like, I don't know, I think that a lot of guys, I don't know why we all decided that because of COVID-19 and being locked down, we had to grow beards. Mom, you may have had your beard before I had mine. This is kind of a recent addition. But Asima, I know that the Imam has a really interesting backstory as to how he came to Islam.
Yes. Thank you, Hank, for the introduction. And as Hank said, with COVID-19, you might notice that my hair is shorter. So as soon as the haircut places opened, I was there and I said, do something with my hair. But today we do have Imam Abdul-Latif, and he graciously is joining us today. I had met him a few years ago, and as some of you may know, I had co-founded my own organization called enjoyinggood.org. And in my first presentation with that organization, I had invited the Imam to help me represent and talk about Muslims and tackle Islamophobia. And in that presentation, it was the day after the San Bernardino attacks. And coincidentally, the Telegram and Gazette of Worcester had covered that story while we were presenting. And many of you may find a cover photo of both myself and the Imam and a few other people on the panel discussion. And from that article is when Hank found us and asked me to be a guest on his show, on the radio show, which kind of progressed into one thing to another. We started a radio show of our own after that, and then now we're here as a TV show. So thank you, Imam, for being part of that journey that you didn't, I don't even think you knew that you were part of that journey.
No, I didn't.
And but when we had first met, what really intrigued me was you are not only African American, but you came to Islam. And as I say in my presentations, the African American group is a big, consideration when we talk about Muslims, because they comprise about 20% of the American Muslims. And, many countries in Africa have a lot of Muslim population. So we do have a lot of ethnicity and cultural background when it comes to this group. But I never really ever found out your story. We talked about it very briefly, but I'm curious, how did you come about, going from where you were to coming to Islam?
It's a long story.
We have 25 minutes.
Actually, when I was growing up, I was into sports, so plus I was very good in school, and I was able to get a scholarship for basketball. And I played at a university in the Northeast, here in the Northeast. So when I went to this university, it was a majority white university. And so when I entered this school, I started experiencing a lot of racism at this university. Even though I got a scholarship and I played basketball and people knew me, but because there were different groups of people from all over the country, or different peoples from all over the country, there were people who probably never met anyone who was black, or only had anyone who was black in their school. So while I was at this university, I started experiencing racism, and that pushed me to start searching or researching about my own roots, So when I started researching and about black history, what is black, because they don't really teach that black history or African history or African American history that much in schools or even in the university. All of that information are in books in the college bookstore, in the college libraries. So I started doing my own research, and I started studying. I started to study about black history or African history. While in my search for knowledge about African history or black history, every semester they give, because I was on scholarship, they give you a stipend to go buy your books you need for that semester at the bookstore. So this particular semester in my second year of college, I went to the bookstore and they give me a certain amount of money I could spend on books. So I bought all the books I needed for that semester, and I had more money available, and the clerk said, I had to use all of it or I would lose it. So I started buying, shorts and other stuff. So when I was leaving the bookstore, I had books and
Everything else.
Everything
The whole
else.
wardrobe, yeah.
The other book parts of the
So
bookstore.
while I was leaving the bookstore on campus, at the exit of the door on the floor in the pile, the clerk said I had $10 remaining. $10 remaining. And I'm looking around, what else can I get for $10? So I'm looking around because at this point I was studying about Black history and African American history. At the exit of the door, in a pile of books, probably 100 books on the floor, with a big price on it for $9.99. It was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Wow.
So, because he had a black face, I said to myself, I'll take that. But I didn't think twice about it because all I heard about Malcolm X was propaganda.
Yep.
But because he was a black face, I said, let me read this book. So I went back to my dorm, threw it in the closet. I didn't pay attention to it until winter break when we had to stay on campus because of basketball practice and everything else. And something said to my heart. I was in my room. I was bored. I didn't have anything else to do. Something said, "Why don't you read that book?" When I started to read that book, I said, "Oh!" It opened my eyes about Islam and what happened from his transition when he started in one group,
Yeah.
but when he left America and went to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, he saw a different Islam, and so that opened up my eyes to look at Islam differently because I grew up as a Christian and everything else. So I said to myself, this is the religion, because he said when he went to Mecca to make pilgrimage, he saw people of all different colors praying to the one true God or to only one God, and that started my transition to study and to learn more about Islam.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people be affected by the autobiography of Malcolm X. And what I forgot to mention in the intro is all from the slaves, 10% of the slaves that came to the United States were Muslim. And their heritage and their lineage were kind of taken out. But we still see a lot of Muslim names in the African American culture. We still see, Jamal or Jamil and those kind of names still in their names, in the names that they use. But it's interesting you said about Malcolm X, coming from one group and then learning about what Islam was when he did Hajj. And for our viewers who don't know what Hajj is, it is one of the five points of faith in Islam, the 5 pillars, one of the 5 pillars in Islam, where you make a journey. It's really for self-reflection. It's following in the footsteps of Abraham and what he had done. And everyone is supposed to go, and the best day of Hajj is the day where we stand outside in the desert and you are left to self-reflect about your good deeds. How are your deeds going to be presented to God? So it's a reenactment of the Day of Judgment. So for that reason, many people do it. It's supposed to be a once in a lifetime requirement that if you're financially and physically capable to do so, you do so. And so millions of people from all across the world do this as one of their primary requirements of their pillars of their faith. And so when Malcolm X did go to Mecca, that's what he saw. He saw so many people of races and religions and races and cultures do the same act and worship that one God that you had said. But reading a book and that was it, was it that powerful, or did you know people yourself who are Muslims that made you think, okay, because usually some people when they come to Islam, it's a journey, it's little pieces put together. Or was this just one of those aha moments when you were reading that book?
Yes, it wasn't. I didn't meet any Muslims in my beginning journey towards Islam. It was because of that one book that brought me reading that book. And in the beginning of the book, I said, "This is the God I believe in." But at the end of the book, in my heart, I said, "This is the religion I'm going to follow." But I didn't know anything about Islam. And after finishing that book, within 3 days, if anyone asked me, "What is your religion?" I used to say I was Muslim, but I didn't know how to become a Muslim until when I graduated from college. I went back to my home city. I ran into one of my friends that I grew up with, and I knew very well, and he became Muslim 1 year before that 1 year before I graduated from college.
Okay.
So I started talking to him, and he asked me, do I know anything about Islam? And I said, yes, I know a little bit about Islam. And he started informing me, he started to tell me that he's on his way to the mosque. Do I want to go with him? So that day when I met him, I said, yes, I'll go with you to the mosque. And when I went with him to the mosque, I met the imam at the mosque at that time. And he started talking to me about Islam and about God. And that's when I entered the fold of Islam that day. Without even, I said, I already did my research for the past 3 or 4 years in college about Islam. So it started with the book, but my friend is the one who, when I ran into him, who had accepted Islam, that's when I entered into the fold of Islam.
It's interesting. You talk about being an athlete
Yes.
and about the racism that you experienced. It seems like, that there were probably a lot of young black men who became Muslim in the 60s and the 70s and came to it through sports stars, through people like Muhammad Ali, or the images that they were seeing on TV at the time when we had so much strife in the nation. Reminiscent, quite frankly, of what we're going through right now.
Exactly.
And then there was this image of strong black men, but also very well dressed. I mean, the bow tie was sort of, something that
Right.
was identifiable. That part of it, is there a connection from that past of the 60s to what is happening with American Muslims today, but particularly black Muslims today?
As I was saying, yes, I would admit that certain individuals had some effect on me, making it a reason for me to accept Islam. My idol was Muhammad Ali. You know what I'm saying? So that had an effect in terms of the positive Islam, but in terms of the group you're talking about, the Nation of Islam, I didn't know too much about the Nation of Islam or Malcolm X when he started in the Nation of Islam.
Well, and I guess some of the reason that I'm kind of drawing that connection is because you were inspired by this. Controversial, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I was inspired by
Right.
the change.
Right.
When
right.
when he left the group, he left the organization, and he went to Mecca and saw how this society of people came together, all different colors, praying to the one true God. This is what inspired me.
Right.
You understand? Right. This is what inspired me. But when I was in college, even though I played basketball, and we had blacks on the team, whites, different people on the team, but even these people, who play with me on the team, still came from cities that didn't have any interaction with black people. Them playing on a basketball team at my college was the first time they had any interaction with anyone who was black.
Did the conversion to Islam help heal any of those wounds of racism? Is there, I don't know if I can put it into words. Is there a way in which Islam, the religion itself, can help with the racial strife that we have in the country?
I'm going to say what my brother Malcolm X said. He said Islam is the only religion that can heal this issue with racism in America. Because when someone enters into Islam, because the teaching of Islam over 1,400 years ago, it dealt with the issue of racism over 1,400 years ago, where the Prophet of Islam, he dealt with this issue in his last sermon. God said, "O mankind, I have made you from one soul and made you into different nations, different colors, into different languages, all right? So that you will get to know each other, not to despise each other." So God creating us into different colors and different nationalities, this is not a reason for disputation or argumentation, right? It's a reason to celebrate your differences. That's because in differences is beauty. This is the reason God created us like this. So he's trying to tell us, and plus he says, and then the prophet said, there's no preference. The white person has no preference over the black person, And the black person has no preference over the white person. The Arab has no preference over the non-Arab. The non-Arab has no preference over the Arab, except by their connection to God. Whatever they have in their heart, their belief and their connection and their actions. This is what differentiates the human being over another person. Not because of the color, not because of or their nationality, or not because of their position, how much wealth they have. No, it's their connection with God in terms of their belief system and their action. This is how God on the day of judgment would make the differentiation. Not on the day of judgment, you're going to say, oh God, I'm white, put me into paradise. No. Oh God, I'm a millionaire, I'm Bill Gates, I have $1 trillion, I deserve to go to paradise. No, that's not going to put you in paradise. What's going to put you in paradise is your correct belief system, your connection with God, and if God bless you with wealth, how you use that wealth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And God says, he says about this type of justice, he says, Ya ibadi, oh my servants. He said, oh my servants, I have made oppression prohibited upon himself. He made oppression prohibited upon himself. So he says, and I have made oppression prohibited amongst you. So do not oppress each other. Do not wrong each other.
I'm not sure we got that message.
No, we didn't get this message.
We're still working on that part of it.
No, we didn't get this message. And what has brought me into Islam has taught me, and this is a teaching, this is a knowledge that's even in Islam some people erase or they cover up. The first racist was Satan. This is what God tells us in the Quran, right? God, when he created Adam, he created Adam from different parts of the earth, and he formed that body, and it became this dark clay, black clay. And then he breathed into Adam his life. And the word Adam in Arabic language and in Hebrew, it means dark, black, right? So then God. He created Adam, he said he's going to make him and his progeny the leaders of the earth, right? So God told Satan to show respect and bow down to Adam, but Satan refused. You know what he said? He said, I'm not going to bow down to someone you make from this black clay. He says, I'm created from fire, he is created from this black mud. I'm better than him. I'm better. Ana ahsanu minhu, I'm better than him. And that same battle that Satan had, this is in paradise now, right? The same issue we had with Adam, right? That's the same issue man is going through now. That saying I'm better. People thinking I'm better than you because I'm this color or that color. No, whoever follows that route. Even though they call themselves people of God, they are not people of God. They are followers of Satan.
Interesting. I guess, if we want to start to get into a little bit, because this seems to be leading us to where we are in the national conversation that we're having right now.
We can continue.
But I do want to have one thing. Do you think that when you only had $10 left and it was $9.99,
yes,
that was God saying, psst, hey, here. I'm going to keep guiding you until you find this.
Years later, I thought about it and I said, man, that was God guiding me. Because can you imagine $9.99 in this book, and I only had $10 remaining, and that brought me to this realization. It took me from one place to another place, when I talk to people, I tell people, what do you think in terms of blackness? You think black people they came from the moon? And if you believe that at one time there was only one man and one woman, where do black people come from? From somewhere else? If we believe that at one time there was only one man and one woman, what do you think? That means we are all related. We are all brothers. This is what I truly believe. If you believe in God, God says we are all brothers, right? Do you actually believe that? For the person who thinks that he is better than someone because he is white or whatever, you know. So yes, I believe this was a divine, what do you call it? A divine action, by God. You know, when he opened up that door for me.
How did your family or your friends perceive your conversion?
I didn't have an issue with my family in terms of when I became Muslim. I didn't have any issue or friends because I was always popular. I was always good with people. I treated people well, and didn't have any issue with me when I became Muslim. You know.
So you read the book, you head to Mecca, but now you became an imam. I mean, it really affected you deeply. Obviously, millions of people have read the autobiography of
Right.
Malcolm X. They don't all follow your path.
Yes. So when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I decided to become Muslim, and then after that, I started going to the mosque. I started going to the mosque more, and because of my zeal in Islam and my desire to learn more about Islam, some brothers from the mosque they asked me, "Do I want to go overseas to go study?" So I say, "I'll go." Yes. But first, why don't you go to Hajj? I said, Hajj? I'm thinking, I just became a new Muslim. I'm thinking I'm going to go to Hajj 10 years down the line, but not 2 years down the line. You know, so they suggested I go to Hajj. Then from pilgrimage, they want me to go to visit to Syria, to visit some universities, some schools to go study. So God opened up the door for me to make my first pilgrimage in 1997, and then after that, I went directly to Syria to visit Syria, and I visited some schools there. And I came home for 2 weeks and packed my bags, and I went back to Syria to go study.
Yes,
Yeah.
not many people, like you said,
Yeah, right.
even if they're practicing Muslims, will take that step to go overseas to study even further. But that's amazing. But I guess the question is, now you're an imam. How do you see when people come to you asking about religion? Because there's a huge thing, more of a popularity, or it's becoming popular for people becoming atheists, for people kind of moving away from being spiritual or being religious. How do you see that? Because you went from somebody who was religious, at least spiritually in your heart, and found your own path and found Islam. But how do you deal with teenagers and young people who are now exploring the concept of atheism?
That's a good question, and I think everyone may have their own reason. Every teenager may have their own reason for why they're staring away from religion, you know, and sometimes it's very difficult to answer that question. But you have to go into their background. For what reason? You have to get to know them and talk to them, sit with them, to get to know more about them, and in order to explain that you understand their situation, you understand their plight, but in terms of being an atheist, right? This is also a form of religion. This is also a form of religion too. You know, even though they don't believe in God, but they do believe in a higher power. Some people, they say they don't believe in God, but they believe there is something greater. But because of their situation, what has happened to them, their personal situation has pushed them away from really accepting God. But we just have to find some way to try to answer their questions, the questions they may have about life, or questions they may have about certain situations. Maybe somebody gave them the wrong answer, and that pushed them away from, you know, why. So many whys people have asked why, but we don't answer them the correct way. And so that pushed people away from accepting God. And God, in reality, God is not black. God is not white. God is not a tree. God is not a physical entity. He's the creator, and everything else is the creation. You know, God is not a horse. God is not a cow. God is not a snake. All these things are things people make up from their own ideas, but somehow we have to try to explain, especially from the monotheistic position, or those who are Christian, Jew, and Muslim, from the monotheistic position. Even those who call themselves Hindus, in their book, in the Hindu scripture, for example, even though they believe that they have the 99 different gods, or 100 different gods, or names of gods, right? They say that many people with no understanding make me into different, this is what God is saying in the book. Many people with no understanding make me into different manifestations. But besides me, there is no other God. You know, so even in the Hindu scripture, God is one God. You know, and so this is the key point that we have to stress to not only the teenagers, to the youth, or to mankind, that God is one. God is not black. God is just. God is not a physical being. And on the day of judgment, God has no children. God has no wives, co-wives, or whatever. He's the God of everything, and he's the only judge on the day of judgment. Everyone else will be judged. Everyone else will be judged. So we have to bring to the people, to mankind, not only to the teenagers, but to everyone, to teach them about who is God and what are the things, the impossibilities of God. God will never be unjust. God will never be unjust. And on the day of judgment, yes, on the day of judgment there will be no injustice on the day of judgment. But those people who call themselves people of God, they have to try to establish some semblance of justice on earth. You know, so what's going on now in the world, in America, and the world about Black Lives Matter? Those people who claim that they are people of God, they will be questioned by God on their judgment for not standing up for justice.
Well, I think that sets up our next episode,
Yes.
which is going to be coming up. But Asima, leaves us just enough time for your perspective.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. As you noticed, it's the start of a great discussion, and we will be talking to Imam Abdul-Latif in our next session, more on the topic of racism and his recommendations, his own experiences, his perspective on what is going on in the current situation with the unfortunate incident with George Floyd. I hope you log on again to continue watching, since it's going to be a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining.